For our next assembly, we're going to build in some time-saving devices. Right, so we're going to have a 2x3 plate, and then the L brackets and the pegs, and we're going to go with the configuration on this one. So first thing I want to do is open up those parts, and so we can find the bracket as our configured item. I'm going to go into the L bracket, and one of the tools that I have to speed up this process is I can select this edge, and with the reference geometry, and so things like the plane, the axis, all the way at the bottom then is our mate reference. And I don't remember the bounding box being there, so I'm going to have to look that one up as far as it's either an envelope or its volume. So if we go to the mate reference, I'm going to pick the edge, and if we go to default, we're going to see that it picks up sometimes, depending on what we've picked, it will actually give us coincidence or tangency. This is one of the times I want the edge, because with the default mate and any on the alignment, it's going to allow that when I find a hole location on the mating plate, that it will provide the coincident and also the concentricy, even though it won't pick up the rotation. Alright, so we get a mate reference folder, and it is default 1. Let's go over to the C bracket, and because these are the same, and go back into the mate reference, I should be able... Doesn't look like I can unsuppress it. Oh, there it is. Right click on the properties and then suppressed. And we're going to set it to unsuppressed all configurations. Alright, so that was right click, go to its properties, and then the feature properties show up, and I'm just going to make sure that it's unsuppressed. And then as we go through the rest of the brackets, the Z bracket should be the remaining. Then it is unsuppressed, and then on the default it doesn't exist, so that's kind of a problem. So on this one we would actually go into the properties and make sure that it's suppressed so it doesn't have that issue. Alright, so we'll go ahead and save, and that gets me to that first one. Alright, so the L bracket was what we're going to start with. I don't have any errors with it. I can go ahead and close and save also. We'll do one more time with the pegs. If this was a just the standard part, the 10x20, we would open each one of those up and add a mate reference to each of those items to make that to take that advantage of those. Alright, so the peg. I'm going to do the same thing. I believe it starts, so this edge should be the same through all of our pegs. And we will go with the mate reference, also edge, also default, also any. And then let's come back over, look at the mate reference, and we'll right click, go to the properties, unsuppressed all configurations, see if that works as an alternative. 10x20, no, it's still picked up, so we have to find the one that is the suppressed and make sure that it goes to unchecked suppressed or unsuppressed on all of those, or not checked for suppressed on all of those. Alright, we'll go ahead and close that one out, and we're ready to start the next assembly. So I think that will give me enough of a basis to work from. So in assembly, we'll pick up the millimeters, and then I can browse for the spacer plate. And this one, where before we were just verifying, I'm going to look for the 2x3. And then when we open, kind of drag it into position, I am going to allow it to rotate over the X. And it's still, it shows that it's jumping, but I think that it's in the orientation. The other alternative would be to just go ahead and let it go origin to origin. I don't know which one you're going to think's easier. So the advantage here is that if I brought in the wrong plate out of the 10, rather than having to do the replace, I can come up to this pull down and say, well, let's go to the 4x4 and see what that looks like. And I can instantaneously move over to any of the other configurations. Alright, so much easier to work with. The origin of the part is out there floating in space. So I want to float, and I want to have some known face location on the top. So if I do a mass calculation from the origin, then it's going to pick up. So again, I'm just doing the select, control select, picking the mates as I go. If I lose my orientation, I hit control 7, which brings me back to the isometric. And we'll go to the face to the right plane and select. So the faces are easier to pick, but if I had a cylindrical part, then I would probably expand this out, and the two items that I would be selecting would be like the front plane of the part and the front plane of the assembly to go through that mix. Alright, so when we go to Insert Components, and I browse over to the L bracket, or to the bracket, because we're using the configurations, L bracket was the last one in position. Now I'm rotated from the picture in the assembly, or the picture in the example, and then notice what's happening is where before when I drug a peg or drug the C bracket over, it didn't find that mate. Now it's giving me a little mate symbol that says it's going to pick up that mate reference and put it into position. It's still capable of rotating, which is okay. And then I'm going to pick the two faces and set those to parallel. Alright, now when I do the select, control select, and we drag in, same thing, it's going to find that whole location, and this is going to speed up your process by quite a bit. So my options are to go parallel to the faces, coincident to the faces. Either one of those will set an orientation. Alright, so from the spacer plate, I did not pull a mate reference, and the mate reference is on the bottom of the part, so we're going to go concentric, and I'm going to have to add each of those items. Alright, so whoops, didn't want that one. Let's try that again. Got a little button happy there. Concentric. And concentric, if I can see even a sliver of that, I will grab it. Let it catch up, and then the movement is still away, so if I have any doubts I can grab that part and see if it moves, and then coincident. Not sure why the insert component stayed up there. Alright, so this is where you're going to start to get into that pace, and if you've used the mate references, this will speed up the rest of the assemblies by quite a bit. Alright, so my location for the spacer plate, I'm going to group those up. And now when I go in and we pick the peg, and it's going to still be a 10 by 20, you can open that up. It is showing me the direction. I hit tab on the keyboard and then click. And then we will bring in another one. And this is where we have to do a little contortionist act. I'm holding down the control button with my thumb so that I can hit tab with my index finger, and I am still holding the left mouse button down, and then I let go. Alright, so that takes a little bit of getting used to manage those all of those finger locations. Alright, so in position, tab, let go. Hold down the control button, drag into position, hit tab to reverse, let go of the mouse. Alright, so a little bit strange, but certainly doable. All of those minus signs are going to be the concentricity in the last part of the group. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The bottom mate folder is all of the mates in the assembly, not each individual part. So when I right click and say lock rotation, I'm grabbing all of those at the same time. the minus signs go away, and then as I were to expand out each item, go to its mate reference, or not to the mate, to the mates in the assembly, then I would see that it locked rotation for that concentricity. All right, and then we'll save, let everything catch up, save all. And then just backspace over and save it as 5-4.